Hello, V-Check listeners. I'm Lizzie Acker, and I'm a reporter on the Life and Culture team at The Oregonian. Today, I'm here with Connie Chung. We're talking about her new book, Connie, a Memoir. Let's get started.
This is really exciting for me, I have to say. You're obviously a icon.
Oh my God.
Well, especially for people, women who are in the news business at all. It's such a treat. So thank you for talking to me.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Seriously, uh, you know, I have actually been to Oregon many times. I mean, to Portland. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I was just reading about when you came for Tonya Harding.
yes, good old Tonya Harding.
That's so interesting because, that's clearly one of the stories, but you're like, you didn't want to cover that story. It's sort of a tabloidy story. And
Uh-huh.
also in it for us, it's like one of the biggest Portland stories.
Yes. And I remember going to the Clackamas Mall so
Mhm.
well. And it was kind of crazy. There were so many media people. They were just jammed in there from all over the world,
Mhm.
Japan and London and sitting right next to the venerable New York Times. You know,
Yeah. Wow.
and I think to myself, this is quite a collection of media. You know,
Yeah. Well, Tonya Harding won't even talk to the Oregonian anymore. I was like, man, you got two interviews with her. She won't talk to the Oregonian. She lives
she
here still. And I'm
she
like,
does.
I would
Uh-huh.
love to talk to you, but she doesn't. I'm like, I want to talk to you for like a life and culture story, but no. We burned that bridge, I guess.
Well, she was a very smart young woman, and I was like very, actually very impressed with her
Mhm.
because she was, she understood media, and she
Mhm.
she was media savvy for someone who didn't grow up with media the
Yeah.
way you and I did. In many ways, she had a tough childhood,
Yeah.
and so. I don't know. I kind of admired her in the end, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I've been thinking as I'm reading through this, there's this theme of like being a bitch. Which
Yeah. I
you
mean,
talk about how
not wanting to be a
right,
bitch.
not wanting to be a bitch, really
Uh-huh.
not wanting to be a bitch, but it's a label that keeps getting applied to women who are refusing to be demure in a way, who are like,
Yes.
who are
Yeah.
standing up for themselves. So you're worried about being called a bitch by saying no.
Yes.
And then there's this whole thing about Newt Gingrich's mom telling you that Newt Gingrich called Hillary Clinton a bitch, and
Yeah.
somehow you get in trouble for it.
This is sort of what's wrong with this picture? You know?
Yeah. Do you think that's still something that women, not just in our industry, but in like any woman
Mhm.
who's trying to succeed, still has to deal with that, or have we gotten past it at all?
Uh, it's hard to judge. I know we haven't reached a level of parity,
Yeah.
not one bit. I mean, in every corporation you look around, I mean, whether it's a law firm or administration at a hospital or, um, a doctor's office, there is this feeling of assuming that the woman is the receptionist or the woman is the nurse.
Yeah.
And and then lo and behold, a man walks in and says, "I'm the nurse," you know.
Right.
And but so we have so many more miles to travel, but we've made progress. The problem is women just can't give up. The problem, I don't, I don't know how we can necessarily solve the issue of the B word. In
Mhm.
other words, if we assert ourselves, we come up against male authority, and they don't take kindly to it at all.
Yeah.
Uh, Um, and it happens, I think, every day to us.
Mm-hmm.
They assume that we are second-class citizens. And I was sort of a double dose of obedience and dutifulness because I'm Chinese.
Right.
So the assumption was, well, you know, she'll say okay.
Right.
And she's not going to fight it
Mm-hmm.
because she just won't do that. We know she won't. And I so regretted many of the stories that I was assigned, and I didn't push back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was a period, an era in which it was even harder, I think, in many ways for women to push back because, as I said in the book, I looked around me and all I saw were a sea of men.
Right. Those
Um,
pictures, there's some pictures that are so, that perfectly encapsulate that. It's like you, this young woman, a young Asian woman, and just surrounded by white men. Like,
yeah.
well, it's, that kind of, I was thinking also, there's a great line. I don't know if I have written it down the line, but that you say, and I shouldn't just talk about being a woman, but whatever, it's on my mind as a woman.
I can't imagine why.
Um, oh, here you have this line where you say, especially you're talking about on air, especially, but men are allowed to be bald, fat, and ugly.
Yeah.
While where women have to always, well, no matter how they look, they get picked apart. Even the most gorgeous, perfectly done woman on TV gets picked apart. I know that. I don't go on TV. Even I get, if there's a picture of me, I still get comments about my body. Do you ever, do you think that, and I don't really mean this in a silly way, but I do think about it often because my grandma was also like a feminist scholar, and she still was like, you need to look a certain way. And I wonder, do you think you'll
Yeah.
ever get to the time or the point where women can be bald, fat, and ugly and still be respected?
Well, for one, I am balding, and
Well, I
I
do respect you, so
I have to do the comb over to
that's
cover the baldness, but I haven't been on the air in a long time, so I think the balding would kind of get in the way for me,
Mhm.
but but there are women who would yesterday be unacceptable on the air just because
Right.
they're picked apart. And but it doesn't end. I think that even today you see women on the air that look similar because there's a look.
Oh, looks the same. Yeah, because it's like you have
Yeah.
to look this very specific way.
Hmm.
And I had a
And
coworker who went to TV and I was like, only a man could do that. Like I couldn't go to TV. They would just destroy me. Look at I look I do not look right.
well, but it's the same with all professions. In other words, do we really have to wear state suits? Do we really have to have stentorian voices?
Mhm.
Do we really have to walk into a room and command it the way men do? Um, because they garner respect just by virtue of who they are.
Right.
A man.
Yeah.
We have to work doubly hard to get that kind of respect.
Mhm.
And I don't know that it's changed a lot.
Mhm.
I know that women have told me
Mhm.
that despite Me Too, despite a lot of progress, we we still uh, cannot command the respect right off the bat.
Right.
Um, and it is extraordinarily frustrating. I I'm hoping that if we can't stop trying,
Right.
so
Right.
I'm hoping that there will come a time
Mhm.
when there is some equity. I
Mhm.
mean, I look at Caitlin Clark, it's the
Mhm.
basketball player
Yeah.
who she beat Pistol Pete Maravich's unbelievable shooting record.
Yeah.
And she even matched Steph Curry, was it, that in three
Mhm.
pointers?
Mhm.
I mean,
Amazing.
it is amazing. And yet, when it came time for her to be a member of the WNBA, she makes a pittance
She makes less than I make. It's outrageous.
It is.
And I don't make very much money, so like,
Well, journalists have never made
yeah.
a lot of money. I mean, journalists are that's what is part of the reason why I love journalism, because we would do it regardless of whether or
Yeah.
not we made a lot of money or a little money.
Yeah, you definitely say that. I feel like there's a point where you're like, I would have done this job for $0. Luckily, they were
Yes.
paying me a little bit.
Mhm.
I love the moment where Richard Nixon tells you to ask for more money.
Yes. Here it was in the middle of Watergate, and he had been underground. I mean, he refused to emerge because he knew he'd get blasted with questions about Watergate. So I'm walking back into the White House gate, and suddenly I see him at the Northwest portico, where the West Wing is. Everybody watched the West Wing. We're right where the West Wing was. Well, had I turned left, I would have gone into the press room.
Mhm.
And when I all of a sudden saw him, so I rushed up, but I didn't run.
Right, yeah, because
Because
the Secret Service.
yeah, I'm actually okay. I'm unarmed.
I'm Connie
And,
Chung.
yeah, the Secret Service swarmed around me. And so I started, because I had covered the Senate Watergate committee hearings, I thought, okay, let's see if I can remember all the questions I really want to ask. And I was afraid to take out my notebook and my pen because I was afraid that would scare him away.
Mhm.
So I'm saying to myself, whatever I ask, I got to remember, I got to remember. And in the middle of this, he looks at me and says, "How much money do you make?" And
Such a good
I
impression.
said, "Excuse me?" And he said, "How much money do you make?" And I said, "Well, I make $27,000 a week. It's just, my base salary. But if I do a story for Walter Cronkite's News, I get an extra $35. And if I do a radio spot on CBS News, I get an extra $25. And if I do a lot of radio, and radio is insatiable, and I would just churn these radio spots out, then I could bring it up to $29,000. And he looked at me and he said, "Just remember this. You have to make more money." And I thought, what? You know?
This is such a great interaction because also you're giving him so much detail about,
Yes.
You're like, well, actually, that is a good question.
Yeah. And I was very proud. I was
Yeah.
proud. Uh-huh. And Helen Thomas, who was the dean of the White House Correspondents, who worked for United Press International, she goes, "What did he say? What did he say?" And I said, "Helen, I don't know." Oh, God.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Good.
God.
I have to say there was another moment that made me gasp, and that is when Jimmy Carter pushed his knee against yours.
Oh, my God.
And I was like, that was the most chaste, but also just like, not Jimmy.
I, my eyes bugged out. I
Yeah.
whipped my head around and looked at him and didn't say anything, but he looked at me, and oddly, he had just given that interview to Playboy magazine that said, "Sometimes I lust in my heart." And I thought to myself, God, I think I saw that look.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
I wonder, it's just so wild to me that Jimmy Carter's still alive. At least his wife is dead, so she doesn't have to read about it.
Oh, God.
Like, I want someone to read that to 99-year-old Jimmy Carter so he can remember what he
Oh, I doubt if he ever,
Oh my God.
truly.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things.
Yeah.
What can I tell you?
Do you have are there any stories that, that
I left
on the
out.
cutting room floor? Yeah. I mean, those are some good president stories, but any other stories that you wish
Um,
they could have gotten in there?
It was really hard. Actually, it was very hard for me to write this memoir, mainly because when I wrote my first draft, which Lizzie, you probably know if because you're in the writing business, they call it the shitty first draft.
Yes. And for a reason, yeah.
Yes. And my editor looked at it and said, "You're just giving the facts." And I said, "Yeah, that's
You
what
are,
I do."
yeah.
And she said, "You can't do that. This is a memoir. You have to tell everyone how you felt." Oh, no, I can't do that. That's verboten. I've
Right.
never done that in my life.
Yeah.
And so I was horrified
Mhm.
that she wanted me to tell how I felt. And I was thinking, oh, good God, I shouldn't have started this thing because
I
I
can't
can't,
follow through.
I can't go there.
Yeah.
But I sort of eked it out of myself. And I really also didn't know how to talk about how to reveal the ups and downs. And so my husband, Maury Povich, who's
Yeah, I've heard of him.
okay, he was determining the paternity of every child in
Right.
America.
Yeah. It's funny, I grew up without a TV, but I still know who you guys are. So that's
Okay.
that's how powerful you're.
Well, he's actually, believe it or not, he has a wider vocabulary than you are the father or you are not the father. He happens to be a voracious reader.
Mhm.
And he used to be a traditional talk show host,
Mm.
the kind who interviewed authors.
Right.
And good heavens, have everyone from uh, Gore Vidal to Maya Angelou, whatever.
Yeah.
So I said to him, "What was the best memoir you've ever read?" And he said, "Personal History by Katharine Graham,"
Mm.
who was the publisher of the Washington Post during the tumultuous days of Watergate and the Pentagon Papers. So, and it was a Pulitzer Prize winner. So I sat down and read it. It's a wonderful book about her life and her the steep ups and downs that she uh, en- really endured.
Yeah.
But she was never woe is me. She
Mhm.
was never um, oh crying in her soup.
Mhm.
She she created this tone that was so warm that I felt as if I was rooting for her every step of the way.
Yeah.
And so then I thought, that's the tone I want to create.
Mhm.
I'm not going to go be a crybaby baby because just like Tom Hanks said in A League of Her Own, there's no
Yeah.
crying in baseball.
Right. Yeah.
There was no crying in news,
Mhm.
particularly back then. No
Right.
matter how sexist, no matter how racist, I was not going to cry.
Yeah, your attitude in the face of some of the most, I mean, unbelievable racism and sexism. But then you kind of throw it back at people in a way that is quite, admirable. I
Yes.
love what is like there's some point where some guy asks you like, I forget what he asked you, but you ask him about priests. What do you say? Oh my gosh,
Oh, yes.
it's so funny.
Yes,
What
that
do they
was
say about priests or something
yeah,
like that? I'm like,
that's right.
oh.
He was a collared Episcopal priest in the uh and he worked for a series of small newspapers, and he had a White House press pass. And his name was Lester Consolving, and he would be at all the daily briefings at 11 a.m. every day. And so when I was posted at the White House, ready to ask, questions of the press secretary, he was this person everyone considered him to be a gadfly
Mhm.
and a pest
Yeah.
because he would ask these terribly off the wall, outrageous questions that nobody ever would have cared about.
Right.
And so he looked at me one time and he said, "Is it true what they say about Asians?" And I thought, I would, for some reason, when I was young, I had quick comebacks. So I said to him, well, is it true what they say about priests? And I know I shouldn't have said that, you know,
You
but
should have.
I
I love that.
no, but I thought, and I know it was not a good thing to say that, but I didn't think what he said to me was a good thing.
I think his was worse. I'm gonna say
No,
whatever he was thinking, which I don't even know what he was thinking. It
I
was
don't either. I'm clueless.
right. I don't know what they say about Asians.
I actually asked some of my friends, and we were trying to figure it out, but
Yeah.
then it was too hard to go there.
Yeah, totally. But the priests, we do know what they say about.
Well, but that would be politically incorrect today to say anything of the sort.
True.
So,
I
so
do.
I,
That was a
on
good.
behalf of my previous self, I apologize.
Well, I salute you. I thought it was a good. Um, yeah, it's so interesting to me. There's definitely this part at the be especially in your early career where there were these serious, yes, racism and sexism, but also you seem to have the support of so many people. And I don't know if it's
Yeah.
maybe just you are telling a positive story in a lot of ways, but it seems like there were so many people who were willing, these are white men who are willing
Yes.
to support you and help, and some women too, support you and help you. Later in your
Yes.
career, I wonder if that informed how you acted, like
So,
how you acted also, yeah, as you moved through your career as a journalist, if that informed your.
Lizzie, you hit upon something that I never even thought of. Right. It's the old cliche. Treat
Yeah.
people, what is it, the way you want to be treated or
Yeah.
whatever. You
That's
know
my
what I mean?
4-year-old anyway. She's
Yeah.
still sense.
It's such an old cliche. I can't even remember it. People always say to me, you've got too much Mother Teresa in you. You have to stop. Seriously. They'd say, no more,
Mhm.
otherwise, it's just too much. Don't
Mhm.
you know when to stop?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Whenever there's anybody who is trying to climb, anywhere, or asks me for help, I can't help but do it. But one of my old friends that I used to work with, he said, "You're one of the nice people I knew," because it was such a brutal business.
Right.
And
Really stood out to me in the story. I'm like, I think of this, I don't work in a brutal newsroom, but I have been there, and it can be such a competitive. And later in your career, there is so much competition, and there is this brutality in a way, But at the beginning, you had so much support,
yes,
and it
yes.
seems like it
You
kind
know,
of goes through the rest of your career when you're making choices. I don't know. It's interesting to
you
me.
know what I think it is, Lizzie? I think a sense of humor helps a lot.
Mhm.
That when particularly women, if we took everything that people threw at us seriously,
Right.
I mean, we'd crumble.
Mhm.
So if we take it to me, if we take it with a grain of salt and throw it right back, and just poof, 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 you know, and get out of my face.
Right.
Uh, it goes a long way just to being straightforward and blunt
Mhm.
and um, I think when people realize that you mean business, you just want to do your job, and would they please clear the jungle, you know,
Mhm.
and and let me take my path.
Yeah.
I think a lot of even the old fart men who saw me as I'm sure a nuisance actually,
Mhm.
were willing to go, all
Mhm.
right, I understand, and I will help, and
Yeah.
I'll stop berating you,
Right.
or I'll berate you, but you seem to let it roll off your shoulder. I
Right.
mean, it would run into the bathwater that night.
Mhm.
Um, And one of the things that I found, and I hope you find this with your husband who loves music, that my husband was so incredibly supportive. I would come home and you know what he said to me? And he'd say, I guess I have to remove the sharp objects from the kitchen. I couldn't help but laugh. And I said, yeah, lock the windows too, please.
Yeah.
And because he would always say to me, don't take them seriously. Take your work seriously. Don't take yourself seriously either, because in my business, in television news, these egos would take themselves so incredibly seriously.
Yeah.
And actually, it's alive and well today.
Yeah.
I see these anchor people that I come across, and believe me, I nobody knows their name.
Right.
I know nobody knows their name. And they're acting like their heads don't even fit in Madison Square Garden. I was thinking, come on, or the Clackamas Mall.
Right. Yeah.
I don't understand people who can be so self-absorbed and engage in such self-aggrandizing behavior.
Yeah.
I much prefer self-flagellation.
That's good.
Because that's what I think women do.
Oh, totally.
Right, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. If only I had asked that question, I forgot. Darn.
Right.
Can I do it over again?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. I feel like there's something about, I don't know, maybe leaning into being a woman and just accepting it instead of fighting against
Yes.
that part of you. And even if, well, obviously the 90s was a really wild time. And I do think probably I was a child then, but things have gotten better for women, I know in my lifetime, my mom's about your age, so I know the opportunities that I have are much better and wider than the opportunities she had. Well, it was so great to meet you. Thank you so much for talking to me. And yeah, what an honor. And your book is, I didn't even get to talk to you about the part where your family is escaping China and your mom loses so many children, and it's just like unreal.
Unbelievable, right? She was an unbelievable woman.
Yeah.
You know what, Lizzie, she never got her due.
Yeah. Well, now she is, I think it's a great book. So thank you so much for letting me read it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. That's a high compliment coming from a writer.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, really.
You don't know. Maybe I'm a bad writer. You haven't read what I've
written. Now I'm going to Google you in a big way.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully it's not a disappointment, but thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Beat Check with The Oregonian. If you like this show, give us a 5-star rating and a review in Apple Podcasts. It really helps people find the show. And tell a friend. Help spread the word. The best way to support our journalism and stories like this one is with a subscription to the Oregonian Oregon Live. You can do that at OregonLive.com/pod support. Until next time.